Okay, so you want to get into gravel racing. You maybe heard your friends talk about how cool it is, or maybe seen some YouTube videos and thinking to yourself that it might be time to see what the hype is really all about. Last year I had my first full season of gravel racing, and before that I used to race Ironmans. So this whole bike racing thing is actually fairly new to me. So I should even listen to a guy like me who haven't been racing bikes for that long? Well, I think you should listen to me, because all the startup troubles and so on are very fresh in mind. Maybe if I'd been racing gravel for a few years, I would have forgotten most of them. So I have a fresher perspective than I would have had if I had done gravel racing for many years. My goal with this video is to go through some of the things you need to be ready to start with your gravel racing experience. We'll go through some of the gear, we'll go through a bit of training, and then we'll go through some technical stuff as well. So the first and most important thing you need in order to have a great gravel racing experience is the right bike. And the most important thing to keep in mind when getting a bike for gravel racing is that there's a great clearance in order to fit wider tires than you would normally use on a road bike. The right tire size for you is something you have to figure out, but I would recommend that you go with something that will be able to fit at least 38s. I'm riding a Trek Bone, which is actually a cyclocross bike. This one with a bit more clearance. I like it because it's a bit aggressive and pretty racy. For some people it might be more enjoyable with a more comfortable bike, and there's plenty of options out there. Tubeless. I would definitely recommend you to set up your bike to ride tubeless if you want to ride and race gravel. Sometimes you'll find yourself riding and racing in crazy places and on crazy surfaces, and you'll be way better off with a more puncture resistant setup. So tubeless is a great way to go. Keep in mind you'll need plugs as well if you are very unlucky. My next recommendation is a hydration pack. If you are a heavy sweater like me, it's definitely worth it. I like the fact that I can have pure water on my back, and then I can have very heavy concentrated energy drinks on my bike. So my final recommendation is choosing the right head unit. I ride with a Wahoo Roam. I actually find it working very well. I like the fact that the screen is a little larger, and my experience is that it has a very good GPS compared to some of the other brands. When you are out training, it's nice to just upload a route, and then you can just go out and explore, and you don't have to find your way when you're out there. And at some races you will need to ride by the computer because the route isn't marked. So choosing the right head unit is definitely important. Next up, training. So the work requirements for a gravel race are a bit different than traditional road racing. In a traditional road race, you will often find yourself in a larger pack with lots of drafting opportunities. When you ride gravel, first off, the surface is way slower, it's often softer, and you will probably not find yourself riding in as large a pack or group as you would riding a road race. So you'll have to produce way more of your speed by yourself. So the fact that you need to produce more of your own speed when you race gravel is a good thing to have in your mind when you are approaching your first gravel race. Depending on the kind of rider you are and your power profile, it might be a good idea to tweak your training just a bit. If you are the kind of rider who likes to ride hard in a very short period of time, a very punchy rider, it might be a good idea to implement some longer stuff, maybe some sweet spot work, something like that. Anything that leaves you working at a steady power for a long time. With my background as an Ironman racer, I feel very much at home doing lots of this steady state work. So every time in a race we have to go very hard for a very short period of time, I struggle a lot. So I actually have to do the other way around, and I have to work on my short stuff in order to stay with the groups that I really want to stay with when I race gravel. But it all comes down to the kind of rider you are and the goals you set for yourself when you want to race gravel. My experience is that the steady state stuff is the most important. Depending on the kind of goals you have for your racing, it might be a good idea for you as well to implement the top end stuff. For me, I want to finish as close as I can to the front and stay with them for as long as possible. So I have to be able to handle the shorter efforts as well. Technique. So of course gravel isn't either mountain biking or cyclocross, but it is still a bit more tricky than traditional road racing. You don't need bike handling skills like Matthew van der Poel or Van Aert, but working a bit on your technique, depending on your background, might be a good idea. In gravel you meet anything from pavement to mud to sand to hard-packed to soft-packed gravel and anything in between. And especially stuff like mud and sand and wet grass can be a bit tricky. So if you want to have the greatest possible gravel experience, you would be better off trying out riding hard on these kind of surfaces before your first gravel race. One thing I like to do is to make a mixed surface loop. So I'll make a loop where I'll come across maybe pavement, hard-packed, soft-packed gravel, maybe some mud, maybe even some sand. And then I'll do some of my harder efforts on this loop. This gives me the opportunity to practice riding hard and riding fast on different surfaces. So when I get into a race and I have to ride hard and ride fast on many different surfaces, it will not be something completely new for me. That's it for today's video. Hope you feel a bit more prepared to tackle your first gravel race. One thing's for sure, being better prepared than I was racing my first gravel event gives you a way better setup for a great first gravel experience. See ya.